Maya groaned as the shrill ringing of her phone pierced through the silence of her bedroom. She squinted at the clock. It was 3 a.m., just a couple of hours after she had returned from her night shift at the hospital. With a sigh, she grabbed the phone, expecting it to be the hospital calling her back for an emergency. "Hello?" she mumbled groggily. "Maya, it's me." The familiar voice of her husband Reed crackled through the line. "We need to talk." Maya sat upright, suddenly wide awake. There was something in Reed's tone that made her stomach churn with dread. "What is it?" she asked cautiously. "I'm leaving you," Reed stated bluntly. "I've met someone else, and I want a divorce." Maya's heart dropped to the pit of her stomach as the words sank in. She had been happily married to Reed for over 20 years, and they had a son together. How could he do this to their family? "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "After everything we've been through together?" Reed let out a callous chuckle that sent shivers down Maya's spine. "Come on, Maya. You're no spring chicken anymore. I've found someone younger, someone who can give me the excitement and passion that you can't." Maya's hands trembled as she clutched the phone tighter. "Who is she? How long has this been going on?" "Her name is Jill, and that's none of your business." Reed snapped. "I want you out of the house by the end of the week. I've already spoken to a lawyer, and I'll be generous with the settlement, but I want a clean break." Maya's mind raced, trying to process the bombshell that Reed had just dropped on her. She had always been devoted to their marriage, working long hours as a nurse to support their family while Reed pursued his career. And now he was casting her aside like she meant nothing. "You arrogant bastard," Maya spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you can just waltz in and out of my life as you please? You have no idea what you've just unleashed." Reed scoffed. "Save the drama, Maya. Just pack your things and go. I'll be in touch with the divorce papers." And with that, he hung up, leaving Maya seething with rage and betrayal. As the tears streamed down her cheeks, she made a vow to herself. Reed and his little mistress would pay dearly for what they had done to her family. This was just the beginning. After the initial shock of Reed's betrayal wore off, Maya knew she had to take action. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, would only fuel her anger and despair. She needed to gather her wits and fight back. The first order of business was to find a good divorce lawyer. Maya didn't want to go through some run-of-the-mill attorney who would just rubber stamp whatever settlement Reed proposed. No, she needed someone who was a shark, someone who could ruthlessly protect her interests and make Reed pay for what he had done. Maya spent the next few days scouring the internet and making phone calls until she finally found the perfect candidate, Samantha Weston, a pit bull of a lawyer known for her tenacity and her ability to sniff out hidden assets in messy divorces. At their first meeting, Maya laid out the situation bluntly. "My husband is leaving me for another woman," she stated, her voice laced with barely contained fury. "He thinks he can just discard me like a piece of trash after over 20 years of marriage." Samantha's eyes narrowed, and she leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails tapping on the desk. "I see," she said, her tone businesslike. "And I take it you want to make sure he doesn't get away with it?" Maya nodded fiercely. "I want to bleed him dry," she hissed, "and I want to expose him and his little mistress for the snakes they are." A predatory smile spread across Samantha's face. "Then you've come to the right place, Mrs. Westwood." Over the next few weeks, Maya and Samantha worked tirelessly, combing through financial records, tracking down hidden assets, and building an airtight case against Reed. It turned out that the bastard had been squirreling away money for years, no doubt in preparation for his little midlife crisis fling. "Look at this," Samantha said one day, sliding a sheaf of papers across the desk. "He's got a secret offshore account with over $500,000 in it, and here are the records of him transferring funds to a woman named Jill Hansen. I'm guessing that's his little piece on the side." Maya's hands trembled with rage as she looked at the damning evidence. "That snake," she spat. "He's been playing me for a fool all these years." Samantha patted her hand reassuringly. "Don't worry, Maya. We're going to make sure he doesn't get away with any of it." With Samantha's guidance, Maya systematically began freezing Reed's accounts and cutting off his access to the funds he had stashed away. She also gathered evidence of his emotional infidelity, documenting phone records and hidden email exchanges between him and his mistress. Finally, the day came when Maya was ready to confront Reed face to face. She arranged a meeting at a neutral location, under the pretense of discussing a settlement. But when Reed showed up, cocky and arrogant as ever, he was in for a rude awakening. "What's this about, Maya?" he sneered, taking a seat across from her. "I thought we were going to keep things civil." Maya fixed him with a steely gaze, her hands clenched into fists under the table. "Civil?" she echoed, her voice dripping with contempt. "You want to talk about civil after you've been lying and cheating on me for God knows how long?" Reed's smug expression faltered as Maya began laying out the evidence, the bank statements, the emails, the phone records. With each damning piece of proof, his face grew paler and paler until he was visibly sweating. How did you find all of this?" he stammered, his bravado evaporating. Maya leaned back in her chair, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. "I have my ways," she said simply. "And this is just the beginning, Reed. You and your little whore are going to pay for what you've done to me and our family." As she watched her soon-to-be ex-husband squirm, Maya knew that she was just getting started. The real battle was yet to come, but for the first time since Reed had dropped his bombshell, she felt a sense of empowerment. She was no longer the victim. She was the hunter, and Reed and his mistress were the prey. With Samantha's help, Maya wasted no time in striking back at Reed and his mistress, Jill. The first step was to freeze all of Reed's hidden accounts and cut off his access to the funds he had squirreled away. "We need to move quickly," Samantha advised, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Once Reed realizes what's happening, he'll try to move the money around and hide it elsewhere." Maya nodded, her jaw set in a grim line. "Do whatever it takes. I want him to feel the same panic and betrayal that I felt when he dropped that bombshell on me." Over the next few days, Maya watched with a sense of grim satisfaction as Samantha systematically dismantled Reed's financial web. One by one, his secret accounts were frozen, his credit cards canceled, and his access to funds cut off. When Reed finally realized what was happening, he came storming into Samantha's office, his face flushed with rage. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, slamming his fist on the desk. "Why can't I access my accounts?" Samantha leaned back in her chair, her eyes cool and appraising. "I think you know exactly why, Mr. Westwood," she said calmly. "Your little financial shenanigans have been exposed, and we're taking steps to ensure you don't try to hide any more assets." Reed's eyes darted to Maya, who was sitting in the corner, watching the confrontation unfold. "You," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You did this, didn't you?" Maya met his gaze levelly, her expression betraying no emotion. "You brought this on yourself, Reed," she said quietly. "You thought you could just discard me like yesterday's trash and ride off into the sunset with your little trollop. Well, think again." Reed's face contorted with rage, and for a moment Maya thought he might strike her. But then Samantha cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "I'd be very careful about how you proceed, Mr. Westwood," she said, her tone laced with subtle menace. "We have all the evidence we need to ensure you get the divorce settlement you deserve, which is to say next to nothing." Reed's shoulders slumped, and he sank into a chair, his bravado deflating like a punctured balloon. "You can't do this," he muttered, his voice tinged with desperation. "That money was mine. I earned it." Samantha shook her head, a predatory smile playing on her lips. "Not according to the law," she said. "And by the time we're done, you'll be lucky if you can afford a cardboard box to live in." As Reed sat there, his head in his hands, Maya felt a surge of satisfaction. For years, she had been the dutiful wife, putting her own dreams and ambitions on hold to support Reed's career and raise their son. And this was how he had repaid her, by betraying her in the most callous and cruel way possible. But now, the tables had turned. Maya was the one holding all the cards, and Reed was the one who was about to lose everything. As she watched him sitting there, defeated and broken, she couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. This was just the beginning, she knew. There was still a long road ahead, with more battles to be fought and more emotional turmoil to endure. But for the first time since Reed's bombshell revelation, Maya felt a sense of hope. She was no longer the victim. She was the architect of her own revenge, and she was going to make damn sure that Reed and his mistress paid for what they had done. As she left Samantha's office, Maya held her head high, her stride confident and purposeful. She was a woman reborn, and she was just getting started. As Maya began to piece together her plan for revenge against Reed and his mistress Jill, she found an unexpected ally in her own son, Ethan. It had been a few days since the confrontation at Samantha's office, and Maya was sitting at home, poring over the mountain of evidence they had gathered against Reed. That's when Ethan walked in, his brow furrowed with concern. "Mom, is everything okay?" he asked tentatively. "I've been hearing some rumors around town about you and Dad." Maya sighed, running a hand through her hair. She hadn't wanted to burden Ethan with the messy details of her failing marriage, but she knew she couldn't keep him in the dark forever. "Your father has been unfaithful," she said bluntly. "He's been carrying on an affair with another woman for God knows how long, and now he wants to leave me for her." Ethan's eyes widened in shock and then narrowed in anger. "That bastard!" he spat. "How could he do that to you after everything you've sacrificed for this family?" Maya shook her head warily. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm not going to let him get away with it. Samantha and I are building a case against him, and we're going to make sure he pays for what he's done." To her surprise, Ethan's expression hardened with determination. "Then I want to help," he said firmly. "Dad's not the only one with skills around here." Maya raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Ethan had always been a whiz with computers and technology, and she couldn't help but wonder what he had in mind. Over the next few days, Ethan became her trusted ally in the fight against Reed and Jill. Using his hacking skills and intimate knowledge of the dark web, he was able to uncover a wealth of information about Jill, her background, her financial history, and even some unsavory details about her past relationships. "Looks like our dear Jill has a bit of a track record," Ethan said grimly, sliding a sheaf of printouts across the table to Maya. "She's been involved with at least 2 other married men before Dad, and she's got a knack for making sure she gets a nice little payout when things go south." Maya's eyes narrowed as she scanned the documents. "The little gold digger," she muttered. "So that's her game." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "Exactly. And it looks like she's been working Dad over for months, maybe even years, slowly convincing him to squirrel away money and assets for their little love nest." Maya felt a surge of white-hot anger coursing through her veins. Not only had Reed betrayed her in the most callous way possible, but he had been planning this whole sordid affair with Jill for God knows how long, right under her nose. "We're going to take them down," she said, her voice low and trembling with fury. "Both of them. They're going to wish they never crossed paths with the Westwood family." Ethan reached across the table and gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Don't worry, Mom," he said, his eyes glinting with determination. "We've got this. Dad and his little side piece don't stand a chance against us." As Maya looked at her son, she felt a surge of pride and gratitude. Despite the betrayal and heartbreak she was facing, she wasn't alone in this fight. Ethan was her rock, her partner in crime, and together they were going to make sure that Reed and Jill paid for every ounce of pain and humiliation they had caused. With a newfound sense of purpose, Maya turned her attention back to the evidence laid out before her. It was time to start putting their plan into action. With Ethan's help, Maya had uncovered a wealth of damning information about Jill and her history of preying on wealthy married men. Armed with this knowledge, she knew it was time to take the next step in her plan for revenge. "We need to bring Reed and Jill down in a big way," Maya said grimly, spreading out the evidence they had gathered on the kitchen table. "A way that will humiliate them and make them realize the full extent of what they've done." Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "I'm with you, Mom. Just say the word, and we'll make it happen." After some thought, Maya came up with the perfect plan. She would arrange a meeting with Reed and Jill under the guise of discussing a potential settlement for the divorce. But instead of a civilized negotiation, it would be a full-on confrontation, with all of their dirty laundry laid bare for the world to see. "I want them to feel the same shame and humiliation that they've inflicted on me," Maya said, her eyes flashing with determination. "I want to strip away all of their lies and deceptions, and expose them for the snakes that they truly are. Ethan grinned, a wolfish glint in his eye. Consider it done, Mom. Over the next few days, Maya and Ethan worked tirelessly to set the stage for their grand reveal. They rented out a private room at an upscale restaurant and quietly extended invitations to a select group of Reed and Jill's friends and colleagues, people whose opinions and respect meant everything to the vain, status-conscious couple. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. Maya took a deep breath as she smoothed her hands over her sleek, tailored dress, steeling herself for the confrontation to come. "You ready for this, Mom?" Ethan asked, giving her arm a reassuring squeeze. Maya nodded, her jaw set with determination. "More than ready," she replied. "It's time for these two to face the music." When Reed and Jill arrived, they were all smiles and false pleasantries, completely oblivious to the trap that had been laid for them. As they made their way to the private room, Maya couldn't help but notice the smug, self-satisfied looks on their faces, as if they had already won, as if they thought they could simply waltz away from the wreckage of their betrayal without consequence. But as soon as they stepped through the door and saw the gathered crowd of their friends and colleagues, their expressions shifted to ones of confusion and unease. "What's going on here?" Reed demanded, his voice wavering slightly. Maya stepped forward, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. "What's going on, dear husband, is that your little secret is out," she said, her voice ringing out clearly in the hushed room. "Everyone here knows about your sordid affair with this woman and the lies and deceit you've been peddling for God knows how long." Jill's face went pale, and she clutched at Reed's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his flesh. "Reed, what is she talking about?" she hissed, her voice tinged with panic. But Reed could only stare at Maya, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish as the full weight of her revelation sank in. With a grim sense of satisfaction, Maya began to lay out the evidence they had gathered, the financial records, the emails, the sordid details of Jill's history as a gold digger and home wrecker. With each damning piece of proof, the murmurs and gasps from the assembled crowd grew louder, until the room was a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. As Maya reached the climax of her exposé, she fixed Reed and Jill with a look of pure undisguised contempt. "You two thought you could betray me, betray our family, and just walk away without consequence," she said, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Well, you were wrong, dead wrong." In that moment, as she looked at the ashen-stricken faces of her soon-to-be ex-husband and his mistress, Maya felt a surge of triumph and vindication. They had been laid bare, their carefully constructed facade of lies and deceit torn away, leaving them exposed and vulnerable before the very people whose respect and admiration they craved. As the crowd erupted in a chorus of condemnation and scathing whispers, Reed and Jill could only cling to each other, their eyes wide with shock and humiliation. In that moment, Maya knew that she had won, not just the legal battle, but the war for her dignity and self-respect. She was no longer the wronged wife, the silent victim of her husband's betrayal. She was the avenging angel, the one who had struck back with righteous fury and emerged victorious. And as she stood there, basking in the sweet taste of her hard-won revenge, Maya knew that this was just the beginning. The aftermath of the grand reveal at the restaurant was even more satisfying than Maya could have imagined. As the shocked murmurs and whispers of condemnation swirled around them, Reed and Jill could only stand there, paralyzed with humiliation and shame. "How could you do this to me?" Jill hissed at Reed, her perfectly coiffed facade crumbling as tears of rage streamed down her face. "You said nobody would find out." Reed opened and closed his mouth like a gasping fish, but no words came out. His usual arrogant bravado was nowhere to be found, replaced by a look of utter defeat and despair. Maya couldn't help but relish the sight of the two of them, so thoroughly exposed and brought low. After months of planning and strategizing, her revenge was finally complete, and oh, how sweet it tasted. But she wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. "You two haven't seen anything yet," she said, her voice ringing out loud and clear above the clamor. "This is just the beginning." Jill's head whipped around, her eyes narrowing with rage. "What are you talking about, you crazy bitch?" she spat, her carefully cultivated veneer of innocence cracking even further. Maya simply smiled, a cold, predatory smile that sent a shiver down Jill's spine. "Oh, you'll see," she said ominously. "You'll both see." Over the next few weeks, Maya made good on her promise. With the help of Samantha and Ethan, she unleashed a relentless legal and public relations assault on Reed and Jill, determined to strip them of every last shred of dignity and financial security. In the courtroom, Samantha was a force of nature, decimating Reed's feeble attempts at defense with a barrage of evidence and legal maneuvering. Time and again, the judge ruled in Maya's favor, awarding her a sizable portion of Reed's assets and ordering him to pay punitive damages for emotional distress and financial betrayal. "You brought this on yourself, Mr. Westwood," the judge said sternly, as Reed sat there, his head in his hands. "Your actions were reprehensible, and you will pay the price." But the real coup de grace came outside the courtroom, where Ethan and Maya waged a scorched-earth campaign to destroy Jill's reputation and social standing. Using the information they had uncovered about her sordid past, they leaked damning details to the press and circulated them on social media, painting her as a manipulative gold digger who preyed on wealthy men for her own personal gain. Within weeks, Jill's carefully cultivated image was in tatters. She was shunned by her former friends and social circles, her name mud in the eyes of the very people whose approval she craved so desperately. "How could you do this to me?" she sobbed to Maya one day, cornering her in the courthouse parking lot. "I was just trying to find happiness, like anyone else." Maya fixed her with a withering glare, her contempt for the other woman radiating off her in waves. "Happiness?" she scoffed. "Is that what you call destroying families and ruining lives? You got exactly what you deserved, Jill. And if you know what's good for you, you'll slink back into whatever hole you crawled out of and disappear for good." As Jill dissolved into a fresh bout of tears, Maya turned on her heel and walked away, her head held high. She had won, not just the legal battle, but the war for her dignity and self-respect. Reed and Jill had been utterly decimated, their lives and reputations in ruins. And as she looked towards the future, Maya felt a sense of hope and possibility that she hadn't felt in years. She was free from the shackles of her failed marriage, free from the weight of Reed's betrayal, and free to start anew. With Ethan by her side and a sizable settlement in her pocket, the world was her oyster. And as she made plans to invest in a new business venture, something she had always dreamed of doing, but never had the courage or means to pursue. Maya knew that this was just the beginning of her new life. The road ahead would be full of challenges, no doubt, but she was ready to face them head-on, stronger and more resilient than ever before. She had stared down the abyss of heartbreak and betrayal, and she had emerged victorious, her spirit unbroken and her thirst for justice quenched. As she walked into the bright, promising future that lay ahead, Maya couldn't help but smile. She was a new woman, forged in the fires of her own hard-won revenge, and nothing and no one would ever break her again. As the legal battles raged on in the courtroom, Maya found herself engaged in a ferocious tug-of-war with Reed and his lawyers. They had clearly underestimated her resolve and the strength of the case that Samantha had built against him. Time and again, Reed's team would try to poke holes in the evidence, or argue that Maya's actions had been overly vindictive and damaging to his reputation. But Samantha was having none of it, countering their every move with a ruthless precision that left them floundering. "Your client's behavior was reprehensible, counselor," Samantha said coolly during one particularly heated exchange. "He betrayed his wife's trust in the most callous and calculated way possible. If his reputation has suffered, it's entirely his own doing." Reed shot Maya a venomous glare from across the courtroom, his face flushed with impotent rage. But Maya simply met his gaze head-on, her expression one of steely determination. She wasn't about to back down, not after everything she had been through. As the weeks dragged on, the legal maneuvering intensified, with both sides digging in their heels and refusing to give an inch. But slowly, inexorably, the weight of the evidence began to shift in Maya's favor. One by one, the judge's rulings chipped away at Reed's defenses, awarding Maya a larger share of the marital assets and ordering Reed to pay hefty damages for his emotional and financial betrayal. "This court finds that Mr. Westwood's actions were not only egregious but premeditated," the judge said sternly, his gavel punctuating each word like a hammer blow. He systematically concealed assets and lied to his wife, all in service of his own selfish desires. Such behavior cannot and will not be tolerated. As the judge continued to read out the details of the settlement, Maya felt a surge of vindication coursing through her veins. This was it, the moment she had been fighting for, the moment when Reed's arrogance and deceit would finally catch up to him in a way he could never have imagined. When the final tally was read out, the look on Reed's face was one of utter disbelief and despair. Not only had he lost a significant portion of his assets and savings, but he had also been ordered to pay Maya a staggering sum in damages, a figure that would effectively cripple him financially for years to come. "This can't be happening," he muttered, his head in his hands as his lawyers attempted to console him. How could she do this to me? Maya couldn't help but let out a derisive snort at his words. How could he still be playing the victim after everything he had put her through? The sheer audacity of the man was staggering. As she left the courthouse that day, basking in the glow of her hard-won victory, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction that went beyond mere revenge. She had faced down her betrayer, her tormentor, and she had emerged victorious. Not just legally, but morally and emotionally as well. Reed's arrogance and conceit had been his downfall, and now he was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life and reputation. And as for Jill, the woman who had so callously helped him destroy their marriage, well, she had already paid a heavy price. Her name and social standing in tatters, thanks to Maya and Ethan's relentless campaign of exposure. As Maya looked towards the future, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and possibility. With her legal battles finally behind her and a sizable settlement in hand, she was free to pursue her dreams and start anew, unburdened by the weight of her past. And this time, she vowed, no one would ever hold her back or underestimate her again. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had stared down the abyss of betrayal and emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. As she climbed into her car and pulled away from the courthouse, leaving the ghosts of her failed marriage behind, Maya couldn't help but smile. The road ahead was wide open, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead her next. With the legal battles finally behind her, Maya felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The long, arduous road to justice and revenge had taken its toll, but in the end she had emerged victorious, her spirit unbroken, her dignity intact. As she sat down with Ethan to discuss their plans for the future, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement bubbling up within her. For the first time in years, she was truly free. Free from the shackles of her failed marriage, free from the weight of Reed's betrayal, and free to pursue her dreams without fear or constraint. "So, what's next, Mom?" Ethan asked, a hopeful glint in his eye. "You've got a pretty hefty settlement to work with. Any ideas on how you want to spend it?" Maya paused for a moment, considering her options. In truth, she had been toying with an idea for years, a dream that she had always pushed aside in service of her family and her marriage. But now, with the world at her feet and a sizable nest egg at her disposal, she felt like the time was finally right. "You know how I've always talked about opening my own little cafe or bakery?" she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "Well, I think I'm finally going to do it." Ethan's face lit up with a broad grin. "That's amazing, Mom!" he exclaimed. "I always knew you had it in you, and hey, with my tech skills and your baking talents, we could make one hell of a team." Maya couldn't help but chuckle at her son's enthusiasm. Throughout the long, grueling ordeal with Reed and Jill, Ethan had been her rock, her unwavering support system and partner in crime. And now, as they embarked on this new chapter of their lives, it felt only natural that they should do it together. "You're absolutely right," she said, reaching across the table to give his hand a squeeze. "We make a great team, and with your help, I know we can make this little dream of mine a reality." Over the next few weeks, Maya and Ethan threw themselves into the planning and preparation for their new venture. They scouted locations, pored over business plans, and even took a few cooking classes together to brush up on their skills. It was a whirlwind of activity, but Maya thrived on the energy and excitement of it all. After years of living in the shadow of Reed's betrayal, she felt alive again, like she was finally taking control of her own destiny and forging a path that was truly her own. And as the pieces began to fall into place, with a prime location secured and the necessary permits and licenses obtained, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment that went far beyond the mere act of opening a business. This was her victory lap, her chance to rise from the ashes of her past and emerge as a stronger, more resilient version of herself. She had faced down her demons, her tormentors, and she had come out on top, not just legally and financially, but emotionally and spiritually as well. As the grand opening day drew near, Maya found herself filled with a nervous excitement that was tempered by a quiet confidence. She knew, deep down, that she was ready for this, ready to take on the world and prove that she was more than just a wronged wife or a victim of circumstance. And when the doors finally opened and the first customers began to trickle in, drawn by the tantalizing aroma of fresh-baked pastries and the warm, inviting atmosphere, Maya felt a surge of pride and accomplishment that was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. This was her baby, her creation, a tangible manifestation of her hard-won victory over adversity and betrayal. And as she looked around at the smiling faces of her customers, she couldn't help but feel like she had finally found her true calling. As the day drew to a close and the last customer had been served, Maya and Ethan stood side by side, surveying the fruits of their labor with a sense of quiet satisfaction. "We did it, Mom," Ethan said, giving her a gentle nudge with his elbow. "We really did it." Maya nodded, a contented smile playing across her lips. "Yes, we did," she replied. "And this is just the beginning." As she looked towards the bright, promising future that lay ahead, Maya knew that she had finally found her path, a path forged not by the expectations of others, but by her own strength, determination, and unwavering spirit. And as she prepared to embark on this new chapter of her life, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude, not just for the hard-won lessons and triumphs of her past, but for the simple joy and freedom that came with finally being true to herself. It had been a long, winding road, but in the end, Maya had emerged victorious, not just over her betrayers, but over the doubts and insecurities that had once threatened to consume her. And as she looked ahead to the endless possibilities that awaited her, she knew that nothing and no one would ever hold her back again. The weight of silence pressed against my eardrums as I stood beside Jack, my husband's hand cold and lifeless in mine. Marianne's funeral was a stark reminder of how quickly life could change, how swiftly love could be snatched away. The church pews creaked with the shifting weight of mourners, their black attire a sea of grief. I glanced at Jack, searching for a flicker of emotion in his stoic face. Nothing, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the mahogany casket adorned with white lilies, Marianne's favorite. How could he be so detached when we'd just lost the woman who'd been more of a mother to me than my own? "Eva," a gravelly voice whispered. I turned to see Robert, my father-in-law, his weathered face etched with sorrow. "There's something you should have." He pressed a photograph into my hand, the edges worn and yellowed with age. I recognized it immediately. Marianne and me, laughing at my wedding reception. My throat tightened as I ran my thumb over her beaming face. "Turn it over," Robert murmured. Frowning, I flipped the photo. Scrawled in Marianne's elegant handwriting were 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Unveil the truth, Eva." I looked up sharply, but Robert had already moved away, melting into the crowd of mourners. My heart raced as questions flooded my mind. What truth? And why me? "You okay?" Jack's voice startled me. I quickly slipped the photo into my purse. "Fine," I lied, forcing a weak smile. "Just overwhelmed." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Let's go pay our respects." As we approached the casket, I felt a sudden, irrational urge to run. Something was wrong. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the very walls of the church were closing in around me. "Marianne was like a mother to me," I whispered, more to myself than to Jack. "I can't believe she's gone." Jack's grip on my hand tightened painfully. "She wasn't your mother, Eva. Remember that." I jerked away, shocked by the venom in his voice. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before he could answer, we were interrupted by a stream of well-wishers, their condolences a blur of platitudes and awkward embraces. I plastered on a smile, all the while acutely aware of Jack's eyes boring into me. As the service drew to a close, I found myself drifting towards the back of the church, desperate for a moment alone. I slipped into a small alcove, fishing out the photograph with trembling hands. Unveil the truth, Eva. What did Marianne know? And why hadn't she told me while she was alive? There you are. Jack's voice made me jump. I hastily shoved the photo back into my purse. It's time to go to the cemetery. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As we walked out into the crisp autumn air, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. At the graveside, I watched as they lowered Marianne's casket into the ground. Each thud of dirt on the lid felt like a blow to my chest. I glanced at Jack, expecting to see some sign of grief, but his face remained impassive. I can't do this, I choked out, stumbling away from the grave. Eva! Jack called after me, but I kept walking, my heels sinking into the damp grass. I found myself in front of a weathered headstone, my vision blurring with tears. A hand touched my shoulder, and I spun around, half expecting to see Marianne's kind face. Instead, I found myself staring into the concerned eyes of my father, Paul. Daddy, I whispered, collapsing into his arms. I've got you, sweetheart, he murmured, stroking my hair. What's going on? I pulled back, wiping my eyes. I don't know. Something's not right. Marianne, she left me a message. And Jack, he's been acting so strange. Paul's brow furrowed, his ex-detective instincts clearly kicking in. What kind of message? Before I could answer, Jack's voice rang out across the cemetery. Eva, where are you? I froze, suddenly terrified of my own husband. Paul squeezed my hand reassuringly. We'll figure this out, he promised. But right now, you need to go back. We can't raise suspicions. I nodded, taking a deep breath. As I walked back towards Jack, Marianne's words echoed in my mind. Unveil the truth, Eva. Whatever that truth was, I was determined to find it, no matter the cost. The days following Marianne's funeral blurred together, a haze of grief and unease. I found myself wandering through our house, touching the little gifts she'd given us over the years, a delicate china teacup, a hand-knitted throw, a painting of the ocean she'd done herself. Each item held a memory, a piece of the woman who'd become my second mother. You're moping again. Jack's voice cut through my reverie. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a frown creasing his forehead. I sighed, setting down the teacup. I'm grieving, Jack. Your mother meant a lot to me. And what about me? He snapped. She was my mother. Why aren't you comforting me? The accusation stung. I've tried, Jack, but you won't let me in. You've been so distant. He scoffed, turning away. Not everyone wears their heart on their sleeve, Eva. As he stormed off, I sank onto the couch, my mind drifting back to happier times. I remembered the day Marianne taught me to make her famous apple pie, flour dusting our cheeks as we laughed together in her sunny kitchen. She'd confided in me that day, telling me how grateful she was that I'd brought joy back into Jack's life. He was so lost before you, Eva, she'd said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You saved him. Now, as I sat alone in our silent house, I wondered if I'd saved Jack at all, or if I'd merely been a bandage over a wound that had never truly healed. The shrill ring of the phone startled me from my thoughts. I answered, hoping to hear my father's reassuring voice. Instead, it was Robert. Eva, dear, I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, I said, surprised. Robert rarely called. Is everything okay? There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. I found something of Marianne's. I think you should see it. My heart raced. What is it? It's better if I show you in person. Can you come over? Alone? I glanced towards the studio where Jack was working. Of course, I'll be there in an hour. As I hung up, a chill ran down my spine. What had Robert found? And why did he want me to come alone? I scribbled a note for Jack, claiming I was going for a walk to clear my head. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I pushed away the guilt. Something told me this was too important to ignore. Robert's house was eerily quiet when I arrived. He ushered me in, his face drawn and pale. Thank you for coming, Eva. I didn't know who else to turn to. He led me to Marianne's study, a room I'd always loved for its warmth and character. Now it felt cold, abandoned. Robert crossed to the desk and pulled out a leather-bound journal. I found this hidden in a false drawer, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think Marianne was afraid of something or someone. With trembling hands, I opened the journal. Marianne's familiar handwriting filled the pages, but the words made my blood run cold. Jack isn't who we think he is, one entry read. I fear for Eva's safety. I have to tell her the truth, but how? I looked up at Robert, my world tilting on its axis. What does this mean? Before he could answer, the front door slammed. Jack's voice echoed through the house. Dad? Eva? What's going on? Robert's face drained of color. He snatched the journal from my hands and shoved it into a drawer. You can't tell him you've seen this, he hissed. Promise me, Eva. Footsteps approached the study. I nodded, my heart pounding so hard I was sure Jack would hear it. As the door swung open, revealing Jack's suspicious face, one thought blazed through my mind. What terrible secret had Marianne taken to her grave, and how much danger was I in? The memory of Marianne's last day haunted me as I paced our living room, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It had been a typical Sunday brunch, filled with laughter and the aroma of Marianne's famous blueberry pancakes. How could I have known it would be the last time I'd see her alive? Eva, you're wearing a hole in the carpet, Jack said, his voice laced with irritation. He sat on the couch, sketching furiously, dark circles under his eyes. I stopped, studying him. When had the man I loved become a stranger? I'm sorry, I just can't stop thinking about your mother. Her death was so sudden. Jack's pencil snapped. People die, Eva. It happens. His callousness shocked me. Jack, she was your mother. He stood abruptly, his sketchbook falling to the floor. As he bent to retrieve it, a folded paper fluttered out. I snatched it up before he could react. Eva, don't, he started, but I had already unfolded it. My blood ran cold. It was a detailed drawing of Marianne, her face contorted in fear, hands clutching her throat. In the corner, scrawled in Jack's messy handwriting, she knew too much. What is this? I whispered, my voice shaking. Jack's face darkened. It's art, Eva. You wouldn't understand. Art? I felt sick. This looks like you were imagining her death. He lunged for the paper, but I stepped back, clutching it to my chest. Tell me the truth, Jack. What happened to Marianne? His eyes, once so warm and loving, now glittered with something dangerous. You're being hysterical. Give me the drawing. I shook my head, backing away. I'm calling my dad. Before I could reach my phone, Jack grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard enough to make me gasp. You're not calling anyone. This is family business. Let go of me. I wrenched my arm free, my heart pounding. A knock at the door made us both freeze. Eva? Jack? It's Robert. I need to talk to you. Jack's face paled. He snatched the drawing from my hand, crumpling it into his pocket. Not a word, he hissed, before plastering on a smile and opening the door. Robert stood there, looking haggard. His eyes darted between us, sensing the tension. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Dad, Jack said smoothly. What's up? Robert hesitated. I found something in your mother's things, a letter. It's addressed to Eva. Jack's facade cracked for a moment. What? Why would Mom write to Eva and not me? I don't know, son. Robert handed me a sealed envelope. She left instructions for me to give this to you, Eva, in the event of her death. My hands trembled as I took the letter. Jack's eyes bored into me, his jaw clenched. Well, open it, he snapped. With shaking fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the paper. Marianne's elegant handwriting filled the page. As I read, my world tilted on its axis. My dearest Eva, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I pray it was peaceful, but I fear it wasn't. There are things you need to know about Jack, about our family. Things I was too cowardly to tell you in life. Jack isn't who you think he is. He's dangerous, Eva. Get out while you can. Go to your father. He'll know what to do. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you better. Please be safe. And remember, unveil the truth. All my love, Marianne. I looked up, my vision blurring with tears. Robert watched me anxiously, while Jack's face had transformed into a mask of fury. What does it say? He demanded, reaching for the letter. I clutched it to my chest, backing away. Stay away from me, Jack. Eva, Robert said softly, what's going on? But before I could answer, Jack lunged at me, his hands outstretched. I screamed, dodging his grasp and running for the door. As I fled into the night, Marianne's words echoed in my mind. Jack was dangerous, and I was no longer safe in my own home. My heart pounded as I raced through the darkened streets, Marianne's letter clutched tightly in my hand. The cool night air stung my tear-streaked face, but I didn't slow down. I couldn't. Jack's enraged face haunted me, pushing me forward until I found myself at Robert's doorstep. I hesitated, my fist hovering over the door. Could I trust him? The memory of his calm demeanor at Marianne's funeral sent a chill down my spine, but I had nowhere else to go. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Robert stood there, his face a mask of concern. "Eva? What happened?" I stumbled inside, collapsing onto his couch. "Marianne's letter," I gasped, holding it out to him with trembling hands. She said Jack is dangerous, that I need to get away." Robert's face paled as he read the letter. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. "I was afraid of this," he murmured. "You knew?" I felt a surge of anger. "Why didn't you say something?" He sank into a chair, suddenly looking every bit of his 65 years. "I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. Jack, he's always had a darkness in him. Marianne tried to protect him, to hide it from the world." "Protect him from what?" I demanded. "Robert, what aren't you telling me?" He took a deep breath. "When Jack was a teenager, there was an incident. A girl in his class went missing. They never found her, but Marianne, she found evidence in Jack's room. Bloody clothes, the girl's necklace." I felt the blood drain from my face. "No," I whispered, "that's not possible." "Marianne covered it up," Robert continued, his voice hollow. "She thought she could save him, change him. When you came into his life, we thought maybe." A loud bang interrupted him. We both jumped as the front door flew open, revealing Jack, his eyes wild with rage. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you?" he snarled, advancing towards me. I scrambled to my feet, putting the coffee table between us. "Jack, please, we can get you help." He laughed, a chilling sound that made my skin crawl. "Help? I don't need help, Eva. I need you to mind your own business." Robert stood, placing himself between Jack and me. "Son, calm down. Let's talk about this." "Talk?" Jack's voice dripped with contempt. "Like you and Mom talked about me behind my back all these years? Treating me like I was broken, like I needed to be fixed. We were trying to protect you," Robert pleaded. "Protect me?" Jack's hand disappeared into his jacket pocket. When it emerged, my blood ran cold. The glint of metal in the dim light could only be one thing: a gun. "Jack, no!" I cried, but it was too late. The gunshot was deafening in the small room. Robert crumpled to the floor, a red stain blossoming on his chest. I screamed, dropping to my knees beside him. "Robert! Oh, God, Robert!" Jack stood over us, the gun now trained on me. "You should have left it alone, Eva. We could have been happy." As I looked up at my husband, the man I thought I knew, I saw a stranger. A monster. And I knew in that moment that my life would never be the same. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jack's lips curved into a cold smile. "We're going on a little trip, darling, just you and me." As he grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet, I made a silent vow. I would survive this. I would unveil the truth no matter the cost. For Marianne, for Robert, and for myself. The door slammed behind us, leaving Robert bleeding on the floor. As Jack shoved me into his car, I prayed my father would somehow find me. It was my only hope now. The car sped through the night, streetlights blurring past as Jack drove with reckless abandon. My mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this nightmare. Robert's blood-stained face haunted me. Was he still alive? And what about my father? Did he know I was in danger? "Where are we going, Jack?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced at me, his eyes cold and unfamiliar. "Somewhere we can start over. Somewhere no one knows us." I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "We can't just disappear. People will look for us." Jack's laugh was hollow. "Let them look. By the time they figure it out, we'll be long gone." As we drove, I surreptitiously felt for my phone, hoping to send a distress signal. My heart sank when I realized it was gone, probably left behind at Robert's house in the chaos. Suddenly, Jack's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face darkening. "Damn it," he muttered. "What is it?" I asked, trying to peer at the screen. He shoved the phone in his pocket. "Nothing. Change of plans." The car screeched as Jack made a sharp turn, heading away from the highway and onto a narrow, wooded road. Fear clawed at my throat as trees closed in around us, swallowing the car in darkness. "Jack, please," I begged. "This isn't you. We can get help, figure this out together." He slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. "This is me, Eva," he shouted, his face contorted with rage. "This has always been me. You just never wanted to see it." As he ranted, my eyes darted around, searching for anything I could use as a weapon. That's when I saw it. A familiar dirt path leading off into the woods. With a jolt, I realized where we were. "The cabin," I whispered. Jack's anger morphed into a chilling smile. Smart girl, Mom's old writing retreat, isolated, off the grid, the perfect place for us to reconnect. My blood ran cold as memories flooded back. Marianne had brought me here once, showing me her sanctuary, but there had been something off about it, hidden rooms, strange locks on the doors. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Now, the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a cabin, it was a fortress. Jack roughly pulled me from the car, marching me down the overgrown path. As we approached the cabin, a sensor light flickered on, illuminating the weathered structure. "Home sweet home," Jack muttered, fumbling with a set of keys. I knew I had to act fast. This might be my only chance. As Jack struggled with the lock, I took a deep breath and made my decision. I slammed my elbow into his ribs with all my strength. He gasped, doubling over, and I took off running into the woods. Branches whipped at my face as I crashed through the underbrush, Jack's enraged shouts echoing behind me. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stop. Suddenly, the ground disappeared beneath my feet. I tumbled down a steep embankment, landing hard at the bottom. Pain shot through my ankle as I tried to stand. Jack's voice grew closer. "Eva, you can't hide from me." Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced it down. I couldn't give up now. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I dragged myself into a dense thicket, praying the darkness would conceal me. As I huddled there, heart pounding, a new sound cut through the night, a distant siren. Hope surged through me. Had someone found Robert? Were they looking for me? Jack must have heard it too. His footsteps stopped, then quickly retreated back towards the cabin. I let out a shaky breath, tears of relief streaming down my face, but I knew this was far from over. I was injured, lost in the woods, with a dangerous man hunting me. And somewhere out there was the truth about Marianne's death, a truth that Jack was willing to kill to protect. As the sirens grew louder, I made a vow. I would survive this night. I would uncover the truth, and I would make sure Jack paid for everything he'd done. With renewed determination, I began to crawl towards the sound of salvation, leaving a trail of blood and broken twigs in my wake. I stumbled through my father's front door, my clothes torn and muddy, my ankle throbbing with each step. Paul's eyes widened in shock as he took in my disheveled appearance. "Eva! My God, what happened?" He rushed to support me, guiding me to the couch. As I collapsed onto the cushions, the events of the past few hours came pouring out in a torrent of words. Marianne's letter, Robert's confession, Jack's true nature, the cabin in the woods. I told him everything. Paul's face grew grimmer with each revelation. When I finished, he sat in stunned silence for a moment before his ex-detective instincts kicked in. "We need to call the police," he said, reaching for his phone. I grabbed his arm. "No, Jack has connections in the department. We can't trust them." Paul's brow furrowed. "Then what do you suggest?" I took a deep breath. "We need to find proof, something concrete that ties Jack to Marianne's death and the missing girl from his past." My father nodded slowly. "I might know someone who can help, an old colleague who works as a private investigator now. But Eva, this is dangerous. Jack's already proven he's willing to kill." "I know," I said, my voice shaking. "But I can't let him get away with this. For Marianne, for that poor girl, for all of us. We have to stop him." Paul squeezed my hand. "All right, let me make a call." As he stepped away to contact his friend, I limped to the window, scanning the street for any sign of Jack. My nerves were frayed, every shadow seeming to hold a threat. Paul returned, his face grim. "My contact can meet us in an hour. He thinks he might have a lead on where to find evidence against Jack." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My blood ran cold as I read the message. "I know where you are. You have something that belongs to me. Bring Marianne's letter to the old warehouse on Elm Street in 1 hour, or Daddy Dearest pays the price." Attached was a photo of my father's house, clearly taken from across the street. "Dad," I whispered, showing him the message. "He's here. He's watching us." Paul's face hardened. "We need to leave. Now." We slipped out the back door, my father supporting me as we made our way to his car. As we drove away, I saw a figure step out of the shadows, watching us go. "Jack, where are we going?" I asked, my heart racing. "To meet my contact," Paul replied, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "He might be our only chance to end this." As we sped through the night, my mind whirled. How had everything gone so wrong? How had I missed the signs of Jack's true nature for so long? We pulled up to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. A lone figure stood waiting, his face obscured by shadows. "Stay in the car," Paul ordered, reaching for something under his seat. He pulled out a gun, checking it quickly before tucking it into his waistband. "Dad, no," I protested. "It's too dangerous." He gave me a sad smile. "I'm your father, Eva. Protecting you is my job." As he stepped out of the car, a shot rang out. Paul stumbled, clutching his shoulder. I screamed, scrambling out of the car towards him. Another figure emerged from the darkness. Jack, his gun trained on us both. "I warned you, Eva," he said, his voice cold. "Now it's time to face the consequences." I stood frozen, caught between my injured father and my murderous husband. In that moment, I realized the true meaning of Marianne's words. The truth I needed to unveil wasn't just about Jack's crimes. It was about my own strength, my ability to fight back against the darkness that threatened to consume us all. As Jack advanced, his finger tightening on the trigger, I knew I had to make a choice. Run and save myself, or stand and fight for the truth, no matter the cost. With my heart pounding in my ears, I made my decision. Time seemed to slow as Jack advanced, his gun trained on my father. In that moment, I made my choice. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't cower. I would fight. "Jack, stop," I shouted, stepping between him and my father. "This ends now." His eyes, once warm and loving, now cold as ice, locked onto mine. "You're right, Eva. It does end now." I heard my father groan behind me, struggling to his feet. "Eva, get out of here." But I stood my ground. "Why, Jack? Why, Marianne? Why any of this?" A twisted smile played on his lips. "She was going to ruin everything, just like you're trying to do now. By telling the truth?" I challenged, my voice stronger than I felt. "The truth," he spat. "The truth is, I'm smarter than all of you. I've always been smarter. Marianne thought she could control me, manipulate me with her secrets and her lies, but I saw through it all." As he ranted, I noticed movement in the shadows behind him. The private investigator? I had to keep Jack talking. "What about the girl from your past?" I pressed. "The one who went missing." Jack's face contorted with rage. "She was nothing. A stupid, nosy bitch who couldn't mind her own business, just like you, Eva, just like Marianne." So you killed them both," I said, my heart pounding. "Your own mother, Jack?" He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the abandoned factory, and that it was easy. A little poison in her tea, and all her meddling was over. And now... A gunshot rang out, cutting off Jack's words. He stumbled, a look of shock crossing his face as he crumpled to the ground. Behind him stood Robert, my father-in-law, his hands shaking as he lowered the gun. "I'm sorry," Robert whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry. I should have stopped him years ago." As Jack lay gasping on the ground, the private investigator emerged from the shadows, quickly disarming him and calling for backup. I rushed to my father's side, helping him sit up. "Dad, are you okay?" He nodded grimly, pressing a hand to his wounded shoulder. "I'll live. Eva, I'm so proud of you." Sirens wailed in the distance as I turned back to Robert. "You knew," I said, my voice trembling. "You knew what he was capable of." Robert's shoulders sagged with the weight of his guilt. "I suspected, but I couldn't. I didn't want to believe it. Marianne and we thought we could protect him, change him. We were wrong." As the police cars pulled up, their lights painting the scene in harsh reds and blues, I felt a strange mix of relief and devastation wash over me. It was over, but at what cost? Jack, now handcuffed and being led to a police car, locked eyes with me one last time. "This isn't over, Eva," he snarled. "You'll never be free of me." I watched as they drove away, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and fear. Robert approached me hesitantly, his face etched with sorrow. "Eva, I know I have no right to ask, but can you ever forgive me?" I looked at this broken man, this father who had tried so desperately to save his son from himself. In his eyes, I saw the same pain and regret that I felt in my own heart. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I think Marianne would want us to try." As the paramedics tended to my father and the investigators combed the scene, I stood in the middle of it all, feeling both stronger and more vulnerable than I ever had before. The truth had been unveiled, but the cost had been devastating. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't the end of my journey. It was just the beginning. There were still questions to be answered, wounds to be healed, and a life to rebuild from the ashes of everything I thought I knew. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. The truth had set me free, but now I had to learn how to live with that freedom. The courthouse buzzed with tension as I took the stand, my eyes locking with Jack's across the room. His face, once so familiar, now seemed like a mask hiding a stranger. As I recounted the events that led to this moment, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and strength. "Mrs. Lawson," the prosecutor began, "can you tell us about the night your mother-in-law, Marianne, died?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Marianne's final message. Unveil the truth, she had written, and that's exactly what I intended to do. "I found her in her study," I said, my voice steady. "At first I thought she was sleeping, but then I saw the empty teacup and I knew something was wrong." As I spoke, I watched Jack's face, his jaw clenched, a flicker of something, fear, anger, passing through his eyes. "Did you suspect foul play?" the prosecutor pressed. I nodded. "Not at first, but then I found a letter Marianne had left for me. She warned me about Jack, told me he was dangerous." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Jack's attorney objected, but the judge overruled him. "And what did you do with this information, Mrs. Lawson?" I recounted the harrowing events that followed, my escape to my father's house, the confrontation at the abandoned factory, Robert's shocking intervention. With each revelation, I felt the truth settling over the courtroom like a heavy blanket. When it was Jack's turn to testify, I steeled myself, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. "I did it," Jack said, his voice cold and emotionless. "I killed my mother. I killed that girl years ago, and I would have killed Eva too, if I'd had the chance." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "Why?" the prosecutor asked, clearly thrown by Jack's sudden confession. Jack's eyes met mine, a chilling smile playing on his lips. "Because I could, because they all thought they were better than me, smarter than me, but I showed them, didn't I?" As Jack's confession unfolded, detailing years of manipulation and violence, I felt a strange sense of relief washing over me. The truth was finally out, in all its ugly glory. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, drained. As they led Jack away, he called out to me one last time, "You think this is over, Eva? It's never over." Outside the courthouse, I found Robert waiting, looking older and more broken than ever. "Eva," he began, his voice cracking, "I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am, for everything." I looked at this man who had lost everything in his misguided attempt to protect his son. "I know, Robert. I know." "What will you do now?" he asked. I thought about Marianne, about her final message to me. "I'm going to live," I said simply. "I'm going to dance again, to create, and I'm going to make sure Marianne's story, and the story of that poor girl, is never forgotten." Robert nodded, tears in his eyes. "She would have been proud of you, Eva, so proud." As I walked away from the courthouse, my father by my side, I felt the weight of the past few months lifting. The truth had been unveiled, just as Marianne had wanted. It hadn't been easy, and the cost had been high, but I had survived. "You okay, sweetheart?" my father asked, concern etched on his face. I smiled, a real smile for the first time in what felt like forever. "I will be, Dad. I will be." The sun was setting as we drove home, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As I watched the colors blend and change, I thought about the future stretching out before me. It was uncertain, yes, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. Marianne's final gift to me hadn't just been the truth about Jack. It had been the strength to reclaim my life, to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. As I closed my eyes, I could almost hear her voice whispering on the wind. "Dance, Eva, live, love, and never stop seeking the truth." And in that moment, I knew that's exactly what I would do.
Lily, $100 a month for groceries should be more than enough if you can't make that happen. We'll just call it quits. Matt's words hung in the air like a bad smell. I stared at him, feeling a cold disbelief wash over me. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. No joke, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug smile playing at his lips. "Prove you're not that useless, Lily, or we're done." I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream. This was the man I'd married, my husband of 5 years. I took a deep breath, the anger coursing through me like wildfire. "Fine," I said, finally managing to speak. "I'll do it." Matt shrugged as if it were no big deal. "Good luck with that," he said, already turning his attention back to his laptop. I walked to the kitchen, his words echoing in my head. Useless. The man who used to praise my cooking, who loved every meal I put on our table, now reduced me to this. I grabbed a note and started jotting down meal ideas, my mind racing with determination. That night, as I lay in bed beside Matt, I stared at the ceiling. He was already asleep, completely unbothered by his cruel ultimatum. I replayed our conversation, every word a dagger to my heart, and something inside me shifted. This challenge wasn't just about groceries. It was a test of my worth, a value he'd callously questioned. I wasn't going to let him win. The next morning, I woke up early and headed to the store with my notebook in hand. I had a list carefully planned out to stretch every dollar. As I walked through the aisles, I felt a strange mix of rage and resolve fueling my steps. "I'll show him," I muttered under my breath, reaching for the discounted vegetables. By the time I returned home, I was exhausted but determined. I pulled out my phone and started filming. "Hey everyone, it's Lily. Today, we're tackling an impossible challenge. A month's worth of groceries for $100. As I chopped and cooked, I felt the knot in my chest begin to ease. The camera became my confidant. I shared recipes, tips, and tricks, pouring my heart into every post. The notifications soon started to ping. Comments, likes, new followers, total strangers cheering me on in this absurd quest. When Matt walked into the kitchen that evening, I was plating dinner. "Smells good," he said, eyeing the meal with a rare hint of approval. I didn't answer. I was too fired up, too focused on proving him wrong through every flavorful bite. As days turned into weeks, my online community grew. Each meal I managed under the budget felt like a victory, not just over Matt's challenge, but over his belittling judgment. The more successful I became online, the more I realized how much I had let myself be defined by his cruel standards. And so, with each dish and every supportive comment from my newfound followers, I built my own fortress of resilience, one recipe at a time. It wasn't just about saving money anymore. It was about reclaiming my worth, about showing Matt, and more importantly, myself, that I was far from useless. Sitting at the kitchen table, I flipped through an old photo album. The early days with Matt. Smiles, laughter, shared dreams. My fingers traced our wedding picture, pausing as the memories flooded in. "It's hard to believe we were so happy once," I murmured to myself. Our first date had been at a small Italian restaurant. Matt had been charming, attentive, hanging on to my every word. "You have an amazing smile, Lily," he had said, eyes twinkling under the dim lights. "I really like you," I replied, shy but excited about the possibilities. Back then, he appreciated everything I did at home. "This lasagna is incredible, Lily. You spoil me," he'd say, wrapping me in a warm embrace. Those moments felt distant now, like scenes from a movie that had long since ended. I shook off the nostalgia and stared at my camera. My growing hobby on social media has become my refuge. Hey everyone, it's Lily again. Today, I'm sharing my favorite lasagna recipe. Affordable and delicious, I said, starting the recording. Cooking had always been my joy, and sharing it on social media was a way to reclaim a piece of myself. As I cooked, memories of Matt and me laughing in the kitchen played in my mind. He used to help me chop vegetables, sneaking kisses in between. But that laughter had been replaced by his cold eyes and harsh words. Scrolling through old photos, one caught my eye. A candid shot of me giggling as Matt tried to flip a pancake. The warmth of those days, the sincerity in his laughter, where had it gone? My phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. A notification. More followers, more support. Cooking for strangers who valued my tips more than Matt had in years felt strange yet rewarding. Each comment cheered me on. "You're amazing, Lily. These recipes save me so much." While my social media presence blossomed, Matt became more distant. He spent late hours at work, giving me a generic apology when he'd bothered to offer one. "Sorry, Lily, big project. You understand," he'd say dismissively, planting a kiss on my forehead before retreating to his phone. With cooking videos and the supportive online community, I found myself less concerned about Matt's coldness. I replied to comments like I was catching up with old friends. "Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the recipe." One afternoon, I set up my camera for another video when an idea struck me. I opened the fridge and checked its sparse contents. Let's make something amazing with what we've got. Watch how we turn these scraps into a feast, I declared, hitting record. It was both a challenge and a defiance against Matt's cruel test. That night, as I set the table with a humble but delicious dinner, I waited for Matt's reaction. "This looks good," he said grudgingly, eyes not meeting mine. The praise felt hollow, almost mocking. But inside, I knew I was more than his cruel words. With every dish I shared, with every follower gained, I rebuilt my confidence. Matt would come home later and later, and the man in those happy photos felt like a stranger. But I found solace in my own growth and the strength I never knew I had. We used to laugh together, dream together. Now our home was silent except for the click of my camera and the buzz of notifications. The world cheering on a woman determined to rise above betrayal. It started slow at first. Matt's missed dinners, the cold shoulder, the excuses wrapped in important business meetings. I would wait at the table, the meals I worked hard on growing cold. Frustration bubbled under my skin. One night, he walked in well past midnight, the scent of perfume lingering around him. I sat on the couch, the dim light from the TV casting shadows across his face. Late again, I noted aloud, not even trying to mask the bitterness. "Work, Lily, you know how it is." He replied curtly, not even offering an apology this time. I watched him walk to the bedroom, anger twisting in my gut. Resolute, I logged into my social media accounts instead. The numbers had climbed again, more followers, more engagement. People were genuinely interested in my recipes, not because they had to be, but because they wanted to be. "Hang in there. You're doing amazing, Lily," one follower commented, lifting my spirits in small yet meaningful ways. As Matt's absences grew more frequent, I threw myself deeper into my content. Each meal, each new recipe shared, became my silent rebellion. It was more than cooking, it was proof of my worth. I filmed everything, from budget-friendly gourmet meals to heartfelt kitchen hacks. The community's love and support started filling the void Matt left. "Hey guys, today we're making a $5 feast," I said into the camera, a determined smile on my face. Despite everything, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. Each new like and comment validated my efforts. But the doubts still nagged at me. One afternoon, as I chopped vegetables for a new video, I broached the subject that had been on my mind. As Matt walked in the door, I turned to face him. "Matt, have you thought about starting a family?" I asked, voice steady though my heart raced. He looked at me like I had just suggested the most ridiculous thing imaginable. "A family, Lily? We can barely manage as it is. What makes you think we're ready for that?" His words were sharp, cutting deeper than the knife in my hand. "Is it really about that, or are you just not interested?" I pressed, needing to hear the truth. "Don't start with this now. I'm too tired for your nonsense," he snapped, brushing past me. Again, the sting of his rejection settled deep. With Matt coming home less and less, the house felt empty. His coldness was a stark contrast to the warmth and excitement I found online. It became routine, his late nights my growing channel. I knew something wasn't right, but I also knew I needed more than his disdain. I kept filming and posting each video, a small victory. As my success started to translate into brand deals, I felt the tide turning. The nights Matt spent away fueled my drive. Despite the pain and isolation, I found comfort in the screen glow, a beacon of hope and validation. Little did Matt know, his neglect and cruelty were pushing me towards something stronger. His distance gave me room to grow, to prepare for what was coming next. With every new follower and every night spent alone, I found resilience I never knew I had. I was on the brink of uncovering Matt's true nature, and when I did, he'd see just how strong I had become. Another day, another challenge. This would be the third week since Matt dropped the bomb with his ultimatum. My spirits were oddly high. The $100 grocery budget had become my battlefield, and I was winning. I prowled the aisles, looking for deals, comparing prices. People might say it's impossible, but I've managed to stretch every dollar. I picked up a pack of chicken thighs, discounted and perfect for multiple meals. When I returned home, I set up my camera. "Hey everyone, today we're making 3 meals out of this pack of chicken. Can we do it?" "Of course we can." I began filming with a confidence that felt almost strange, yet very real. As my audience cheered in the comments, Matt's absence became a dull ache. His late nights continued, his presence minimal. I moved around the kitchen like an artist in her studio. Every chop of the knife was a brushstroke against the canvas of betrayal he had painted. Matt stumbled through the door later that night. I was on the couch, answering messages from my followers. He walked into the kitchen, looking around for the meal I'd prepared. "Where's dinner?" he asked, his voice gruff from another night out. "In the fridge. I saved you a plate," I replied without looking up. He grumbled as he heated it up. "You know this budget thing isn't going to work forever," he said between bites, his tone laced with condescension. "Maybe not," I replied calmly, typing another response on my phone, "but I'm making it work now." At the end of the month, I reviewed our expenses. I had done it. I proved him wrong. I filmed a special video to mark the achievement. "Hey everyone, guess what? We've completed an entire month on a $100 grocery budget. Thanks to all your support." My followers' encouraging comments poured in. Matt's reaction, however, was as heartless as ever. "So you did it. Big deal. Don't expect a medal," he said, tossing the statement carelessly over his shoulder. Frustration bubbled up, but I swallowed it down, determined not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Instead, I poured all of it into my cooking. Every critique from Matt was met with another video, another shared recipe. The tension in the house was palpable, the air thick with unspoken words. Our conversations were limited to basics, a flimsy facade of normalcy. Meanwhile, my social media presence grew stronger each day. Fans eagerly awaited my posts, and engagement skyrocketed. One evening, while editing a new video, I heard Matt on the phone in the next room. His voice was low and secretive. "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow night, same place." I paused, the words hanging in the air. A cold realization began to form. It wasn't just work keeping him away. My hands shook as I continued editing, playing the dutiful wife while pieces of a darker puzzle slowly clicked into place. The $100 challenge had come and gone, but something far more challenging was on the horizon. But first, I needed proof. Proof that he was the vile and manipulative man I was beginning to see clearly. From that moment on, every step, every meal, every message to my followers became more than just a hobby. It was preparation for a showdown I knew was inevitable. And I would be ready. Mark my words, I would be ready. I was unloading groceries when I heard Matt's voice from the living room. He was on the phone again, talking in that hushed tone he'd adopted lately. "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow night." "Same place," he said with a disgusting smirk in his voice. "Meeting you is the only thing keeping me sane right now." My heart hammered in my chest. I crept closer, hiding behind the kitchen door. "Don't worry, Taylor. Friday night is ours. She thinks it's another late meeting." I felt the blood drain from my face. Matt was having an affair. My body moved on autopilot, arranging groceries while my mind raced. I needed proof. Later that night, lying next to the man betraying me, I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of his deceit. But instead of falling apart, I felt a steely resolve harden within me. I reached out to my growing community online for the strength to follow through. The next day, I called a private investigator. "I need your help," I said, clutching the phone tight. "I think my husband is cheating on me." "Let's meet. I can discuss what we'll need to do," he responded, his voice firm yet kind. After our meeting, the investigator began his work. While he gathered evidence, I threw myself back into my cooking videos on social media. I smiled and shared, all while piecing together the destruction Matt was bringing into our lives. As I documented recipes, the investigator gave me regular updates. He's definitely involved with someone named Taylor. They've been meeting at the same hotel every Friday night, he informed me one evening. It stung, but I kept calm. "Thank you." "Keep digging," I replied, determination underscoring every word. The evidence piled up quickly. Photos of Matt with Taylor, incriminating text messages, receipts for lavish dinners and gifts. It was sickening. Each new piece of information was both a dagger to my heart and a nail in his coffin. On the Friday of their next rendezvous, I put on my dinner table smile as Matt prepared to leave. "Big project tonight?" I asked sweetly. "Yeah, don't wait up," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Of course. Good luck," I replied, feigning innocence. Once he was gone, I sat down with the evidence, feeling a strange mix of emotions. There was anger, betrayal, and something else, relief. His demand for the $100 grocery budget, his absence, his coldness, it all made sense now. I stared at the pile of proof before me. The private investigator had even gathered videos of Matt laughing intimately with Taylor, looking at her the way he used to look at me. The anger simmered, but I held it back. The next morning, I confronted Matt, evidence spread out on the table. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. His face went pale, eyes widening as he took in the photos and texts. "It's not what it looks like," he started, but I cut him off. "Save it. I know everything about Taylor, about the money you've been wasting on this affair. You thought making me stretch $100 would distract me." He opened his mouth, but no words came. The shock, the guilt, the realization of what he'd done, it was all written on his face. "From now on, you're on your own," I said, packing the evidence into a folder. "I'll be talking to a lawyer. We're done, Matt." As I walked away, I felt lighter, stronger. Out of Matt's betrayal, I had found my own power. And this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The weight of what I'd uncovered gave me no rest. But today was different. Today wasn't about waiting. It was about action. As Matt stumbled into the kitchen, barely awake, he didn't even glance at me. "Where's my breakfast?" He growled, his usual demands cutting through the silence. I met his eyes with an icy stare. "You want something to eat?" I tossed a crumpled $2 bill on the table. "Here's $2. Get yourself some cheap junk. Figure the rest out yourself." He froze, confusion and anger flashing across his face. "What do you mean?" "This is ridiculous," he protested. "Ridiculous. You think your affair is ridiculous. I know everything, Matt. Taylor, the hotels, the money you've wasted." I threw the folder of evidence onto the table, its contents spilling out. His face turned sickly pale. "Lily, I can explain," he pleaded. "No, you can't." I kept my voice firm, every word a blow to his crumbling facade. "You pushed me to prove my worth, you tested me. Now it's my turn." I watched him scramble to find words, any words. But there was nothing left to say. I reveled in the silence, then turned and walked away, leaving him amidst the evidence of his betrayal. Once I was out of the house, I called my lawyer. "I need to file for divorce, and I want to make sure he pays for what he's done," I told her. My lawyer, Sarah, didn't miss a beat. "Gather all financial records, any proof of infidelity, anything that shows misconduct. We'll make sure he gets what he deserves." Armed with her guidance and my newfound determination, I dove into preparing my case. At the same time, my social media following was buzzing. Subtly, I started sharing snippets of my story without mentioning Matt directly. Sometimes life throws challenges that test our strength. I posted alongside a photo of a simple yet elegant meal. The comments overflowed with support, my online community rallying around me in ways I'd never expected. Each day, I became more focused. Sarah and I met regularly, carefully piecing together the case that would ensure justice. Meanwhile, Matt's attempts at reconciliation became more desperate. "Lily, can we talk?" He pleaded one evening, blocking my path in the hallway. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, pushing past him with a cold stare. His workplace caught wind of his affair soon after. Whispers and side glances followed him in the office. Taylor, now exposed, tried to keep her distance, leaving him more alone than ever. As my cooking brand continued to rise, I felt the tide shifting. My focus wasn't revenge for its own sake. It was reclaiming my life, my worth. I plunged into new projects, developing recipes, and making plans for a future without Matt. On the day of our court hearing, I walked into the courthouse with Sarah by my side. Matt looked gaunt, defeated. The evidence was overwhelming, and the judgment was swift. He would pay dearly, financially through alimony, and socially as his reputation lay in tatters. As we exited the courtroom, Sarah turned to me, her smile filled with genuine warmth. "You did it," she said. I nodded, a weight lifting off my shoulders. This was just the beginning. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. It wasn't just about winning the case. It was the freedom from years of deceit and manipulation. But the journey wasn't over. Matt's world was only beginning to crumble. The first crack appeared when Taylor publicly distanced herself from him. "I can't be associated with this mess," she told him during their last clandestine meeting, which ironically wasn't so clandestine anymore. The private investigator had made sure those images surfaced at just the right time. Matt staggered into the house late that evening, a shadow of his former self. "Lily, please, can we talk?" His voice was strained, desperate. I glanced at him with detached indifference. "We have nothing left to discuss. You made sure of that." He tried to approach, but I stepped back, a barrier he couldn't cross. He was imploding, and for the first time, I felt nothing but a cold, distant satisfaction. That night, I posted a new video, my mind whirling with new ideas. Hey everyone, today's recipe is all about fresh starts and new beginnings. Let's make something amazing. The community's responses poured in, each comment a brick in the new foundation I was building. Meanwhile, Matt's downfall accelerated. News of his affair leaked to his boss, and the company couldn't risk the scandal. He was summoned to a meeting and returned home with a cardboard box filled with his desk remnants. "I lost my job, Lily," he muttered helplessly, dropping the box by the door. "Not my problem," I said, not even bothering to look up from my laptop. I was deep into planning my next online event, a cooking class live stream that was already attracting sponsors. Days turned into weeks, each one worse for Matt. Without his job, his income plummeted. The judgment from the court added a financial strain he couldn't handle alone. His so-called friends vanished, each slipping away to avoid the mess he had become. One evening, sipping coffee in my new favorite cafe, I received an email. My first cookbook was officially published and ready for pre-order. I could hardly contain my excitement. I shared the news with my followers, the comments overflowing with encouragement and pride. Returning home, I found Matt rummaging through old bills, his despair palpable. "I don't know how to fix this, Lily," he said, tears brimming in his eyes. "That's your mess to clean up," I replied coolly. "You brought this on yourself." Watching him unravel was a stark reminder of the man he truly was. A man who tried to break me but ended up shattering himself. I felt a strange sense of closure. Moving forward, I immersed myself in new projects, cooking segments, sponsorship deals, and community events. Each success was mine alone, a testament to my resilience. Matt moved out a month later, defeated and broken. The house, now silent without his toxicity, became my sanctuary. I redecorated, shifting from old memories to new aspirations. From the ashes of betrayal, a stronger me had emerged. With my growing brand and supportive followers, I was ready to embrace a future untethered from the past. My story wasn't about revenge or loss anymore. It was about rebirth, a new chapter waiting to be written. The first morning in my new apartment was surreal. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the minimalist furniture I'd carefully chosen. The space felt fresh, free from the shadows of the past. I brewed a cup of coffee and took a deep breath. The air smelled like potential, like new beginnings. With my recipe book published and my social media thriving, today marked the start of something beautiful. I sat down at my kitchen counter, scrolling through messages from followers. "Congratulations on the new book, Lily. Can't wait to try the recipes." Each comment felt like a step farther from my old life. As the day progressed, I finalized details for a cooking event, a live class that had drawn considerable interest. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, each one a reminder that I was building something all on my own. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was a delivery. A bouquet of vibrant sunflowers with a note. "To new beginnings, with love, your fans." I smiled, placing the flowers on the table. Their brightness mirrored my newfound optimism. Later, preparing for the live stream, I couldn't help but think of how far I'd come. The screen blinked to life, and hundreds of faces filled the grid, each one eager to learn from me. Welcome, everyone. Today we're making a special recipe from my new book. It's all about transformation, taking simple ingredients and turning them into something extraordinary. I began, the excitement in my voice matched by the enthusiasm in the comments. The interaction was electric, each step met with applause, each tip eagerly absorbed. I felt a deep connection, a shared journey of resilience and growth. By the end, the chat was filled with praise and gratitude. "Thank you, Lily. You've inspired us so much," one comment said. "No, thank you," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. You've all been my strength. After the class, I settled into the quiet of my apartment, reflecting on the path that led me here. The old life with Matt felt like a distant memory, a heavy coat I had finally shrugged off. A few days later, I heard through mutual friends that Matt was struggling. His new job was low-paying, and Taylor had left him after realizing he couldn't provide the lifestyle she wanted. There was no satisfaction in his misery, only a reminder of what I'd escaped. I poured my energy into new projects, expanding my cooking brand, planning future books, and engaging more deeply with my online community. Each venture was a brick in the sturdy foundation of my new life. One evening, as I signed copies of my book at a local bookstore, a woman approached me. "Lily, your journey has been so inspiring. You gave me the courage to leave my own toxic relationship." Her words touched me deeply. "Thank you. It means the world to hear that we all have the strength to rebuild, even when it feels impossible." As I returned to my apartment that night, the city lights twinkling outside, I felt a profound sense of peace. The woman's words lingered in my mind, solidifying my purpose. Revenge had given way to something much more fulfilling: empowerment, growth, and the unwavering belief that I could forge my own path. My past with Matt was a chapter closed, and I was ready to write the rest of my story, one filled with hope, resilience, and endless possibilities.
I never thought a simple piece of paper could change everything, but that's exactly what happened on a quiet Tuesday morning at Sugar Haven. The letter was waiting for me when I opened the store, tucked halfway under the front door like a snake ready to strike. My name is Cashin, but everyone calls me Cass. 5 years ago, I traded my high-powered career as a corporate crisis manager to help run my husband's family candy store. It wasn't exactly a lateral move, but love makes you do crazy things. The paper trembled in my hands as I read it. The store's finances are being mismanaged. If things continue this way, Sugar Haven will be bankrupt within months. Someone who cares. I read it 3 more times, my stomach dropping further with each pass. The morning sun streamed through our storefront windows, catching the dust motes dancing around our display of handmade chocolates. Everything looked normal, peaceful even. But something felt very, very wrong. "Morning, darling." My mother-in-law Margot's voice rang out as she swept into the store, perfectly coiffed as always. "Those display cases need cleaning before we open." I quickly stuffed the letter into my pocket. "Margot, do you have a minute? There's something we should discuss." She barely glanced my way, busy adjusting a row of lollipops. "Can it wait? The morning rush will start soon. It's about the store's finances, Dash." "Oh, not this again." She turned to face me, her smile tight. "Cashin, dear, I've been running this store since before you were born. Everything is fine. But what if it's not? Maybe we should look at the books together, Dash." "The books are my responsibility," she cut in sharply. "Your job is to manage the front of house and keep the customers happy. That's what you're good at." The bell above the door chimed as my husband Eli walked in, bringing with him the scent of coffee and his usual easy smile. "Morning, loves." "Mom, those new display cases you ordered arrived. They're gorgeous." "New display cases?" I asked. "I thought we agreed to hold off on any major purchases this quarter." "These were necessary," Margot said smoothly. "First impressions matter in retail. Speaking of which, I've hired a new assistant to help with the afternoon rush. Lila starts tomorrow." "Wait, what?" I stared at her. "We didn't discuss hiring anyone." "We're discussing it now," she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eli agrees we need the help, don't you, sweetheart?" Eli nodded, already distracted by his phone. "Whatever you think is best, Mom." I watched them, this mother and son duo, who could so casually make decisions that affected all of us without even consulting me. The anonymous letter burned in my pocket like a hot coal. "I need to check something in the office," I said, turning away before either could respond. As I walked to the back of the store, I heard Margot's voice. "Oh, and Eilif, dear, remember we have that meeting with the bank tomorrow." I froze mid-step. What bank meeting? Why hadn't anyone mentioned this to me? Standing there among the shelves of candy and childhood dreams, I suddenly felt like an outsider in my own life. Something was happening at Sugar Haven, something beyond normal family business drama. The letter writer knew it, and now I knew it too. I pulled out my phone and texted my friend Claire, who'd quit working here 6 months ago. Need to talk. Something's not right at the store. Her response came quickly. Finally figured it out, huh? Meet me for coffee after your shift. There's a lot you need to know. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, my heart racing. Whatever was going on, I had a feeling this was just the beginning. And for the first time since leaving my old career, I felt that familiar surge of adrenaline that came with unraveling a crisis. Game on, Margot. Game on. Claire was already waiting at our usual corner table in Brewster's when I arrived, 2 steaming mugs in front of her. The afternoon sun caught the worry lines around her eyes as she watched me approach. You look like hell, she said, pushing a coffee toward me. Thanks for sugarcoating it. I slumped into the chair, exhausted after a day of fake smiles and pretending everything was fine. You were right about leaving Sugar Haven when you did. What finally tipped you off? I pulled out the anonymous letter and slid it across the table. Claire read it, her expression darkening. Well, shit. Though I'm not surprised. You should see what Eli just bought. She turned her phone toward me, showing an Instagram post. My husband stood proudly next to a brand new Tesla, Margot beaming beside him. The timestamp showed it was posted an hour ago. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. We can't afford that. We literally just had a conversation about cutting back on expenses. That's not all, Claire said, scrolling through more photos. Designer clothes, fancy dinners, weekend trips. He's been living large for months now. With what money? I whispered, more to myself than to her. The store's barely breaking even. Remember that inheritance you got from your aunt last year? The one you were saving for emergencies. My blood ran cold. He wouldn't. Check your joint account. With trembling fingers, I pulled up our banking app. The inheritance money was still there, but there was something else, a series of large transfers from our business account to an unfamiliar number. What's this account? Claire asked, peering at my screen. I don't know. I don't have access to it. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. But I bet Margot does. Claire's expression softened. Honey, you need to wake up. This isn't just about the store anymore. They're playing you. But why? I gave up everything to help them. My career, my independence dash. Because you let them, she cut in. You're so busy trying to prove yourself worthy of their precious family legacy that you can't see what's really happening. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Eli. Where are you? Mom needs help with inventory. She needs help with inventory because she just fired 2 more experienced staff members last week, Claire said, reading the message upside down. Replace them with minimum wage teenagers who don't know a truffle from a Tootsie Roll. I stood up, gathering my things. I should go. Cass, wait. Claire grabbed my wrist. Remember when I quit? It wasn't just because of Margot's attitude. I found something in the office files, something that didn't add up. But when I tried to tell you, you weren't ready to hear it. And now I think you are. Meet me tomorrow morning before the store opens. Bring your laptop and the store's tax returns from last year. I hesitated. Those are in Margot's office. She keeps it locked. Claire's smile was sharp. Good thing I made a copy of her key before I left. Back at the store, I found Eli and Margot huddled together in the office, speaking in hushed tones. They jumped apart when I entered. Where have you been? Margot demanded. We have that bank meeting tomorrow, and these numbers need to be perfect. What bank meeting? I asked, watching their faces carefully. Just routine business, Eli said quickly. Nothing to worry about. Then you won't mind if I join you? Mother and son exchanged glances. That won't be necessary, Margot said smoothly. You focus on training the new girl tomorrow. Lila needs a proper introduction to how we do things here. I nodded, playing along. But as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of papers on Margot's desk, loan applications with Sugar Haven listed as collateral. That night, after Eli fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and grabbed his phone. The password was still my birthday. At least that hadn't changed. What I found in his recent emails made my heart stop. Tomorrow's meeting wasn't routine at all. It was about refinancing a massive debt I knew nothing about. And my inheritance account was listed as potential collateral. I looked at my sleeping husband, this man I thought I knew, and made a decision. Tomorrow morning, I'd meet Claire and finally learn the truth. But first, I had a stop to make. At the bank where I kept my inheritance, to move it somewhere safe. Let the games begin. The bank opened at 8, but I was there at 7:30, pacing outside like a burglar casing the joint. By 9, my inheritance was safely transferred to a new private account. By 9:15, I was sitting in Claire's car outside Sugar Haven, staring at the store's tax returns spread across her dashboard. Holy shit, I whispered, running my finger down the columns of numbers. These can't be right. Oh, they're right, Claire said. Just not legal. Look at the supplier invoices. She pulled out more papers, showing me identical invoices with different amounts. One set matched the tax returns, the other showed much higher numbers. The difference was staggering. Margot's been cooking the books, I said, my mouth dry. But why? The store's been profitable for years. Has it? Claire raised an eyebrow. Or has she just been really good at making it look that way? The store's front door opened, and a young woman with bright red hair stepped out to sweep the sidewalk. Lila, Margot's new hire. She looked up, caught my eye, and quickly looked away. That's weird, I muttered. She's not supposed to start until today. Looks pretty comfortable for her first day, Claire observed. My phone buzzed. Eli calling. I ignored it. I need to get inside before they wonder where I am. Cass. Claire grabbed my arm. Be careful. You're not dealing with amateurs here. Inside, I found Margot showing Lila around the store like they were old friends. Lila's movements were too confident, too familiar with the space. Good you're here, Margot said brightly. Lila's been helping me organize the new inventory system. Such a quick learner. Really? I leaned against the counter. And when exactly did she learn it? A flicker of something, worry? Crossed Margot's face before her smile returned. Lila's been helping out informally for a few weeks. I wanted to make sure she was a good fit before making it official. Interesting. I turned to Lila. And what did you do before this? She started, but Margot cut her off. Shouldn't you be checking on that order for the Johnson wedding? It needs to be ready by noon. Actually, I said, not moving. I'd love to hear about Lila's experience. Especially with bookkeeping. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lila's eyes darted between us like she was watching a tennis match. Cashin. Margot's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. A word in my office? Once inside, she closed the door with deliberate calm. I don't appreciate you interrogating my employees. And I don't appreciate being lied to about the store's finances. Her laugh was sharp. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, showing her the photo I'd taken of the doctored invoices. Want to explain these? The color drained from her face. Where did you get those? Does it matter? What matters is what they show: fraud, tax evasion, and God knows what else. Is this why you've been pushing so hard to get access to my inheritance? To cover your tracks. You don't understand, Dash. Then make me understand. I slammed my hand on the desk. Because from where I'm standing, you and Eli have been systematically lying to me while trying to steal my money. The office door opened. Eli stood there, his face ashen. Mom? The bank called. They're denying the loan. Margot sank into her chair. That's not possible. We had an agreement. They found irregularities in our paperwork. His eyes met mine. What did you do? Me. I laughed, the sound hollow. Why don't you ask your mother about the fake invoices? Or better yet, ask Lila. She seems to know more about this place than I do, and I'm supposedly co-managing it. Cass, please. Eli stepped toward me. Whatever you think is happening, Dash. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop lying. I moved my inheritance this morning. You can't touch it. Margot's head snapped up. You what? And I have copies of everything. The real books, the fake invoices, all of it. So here's what's going to happen. Either you both start telling me the truth right now, or I walk straight to the IRS. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Eli spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Mom, tell her. Margot looked between us, her carefully constructed world crumbling. When she spoke, her words hit me like physical blows. Sugar Haven has been insolvent for 3 years. Everything, the loans, the fake books, it was all to keep us afloat until we could access your inheritance. And Lila, my accountant's daughter, She's been helping us manage the situation. I looked at my husband, this stranger wearing Eli's face. How long have you known? His silence was answer enough. I spent the night at Claire's, ignoring the flood of texts and calls from both Eli and Margot. By morning, I had 18 missed calls and one email with the subject line, Family Emergency Meeting, 9 a.m. The irony of them finally including me in a meeting wasn't lost on me. When I walked into Sugar Haven at exactly 9, the store was still dark. Voices drifted from the back office, sharp and urgent. I found them all there, Margot behind her desk, Eli pacing, and Lila perched nervously in the corner with a laptop. You came, Eli said, relief washing over his face. Don't. I held up my hand. Just tell me what this is about. Margot cleared her throat. We have a proposal. A way to save everything. Everything you've been lying about? The store is salvageable, she pressed on. With the right investment dash. You mean my inheritance. It would be an investment in your future too, Eli jumped in. We could restructure, make you a proper partner dash. I laughed. The sound harsh even to my own ears. Now you want to make me a partner? After 3 years of treating me like a glorified cashier. 1/3 ownership, Margot said quietly. Equal partnership with Eli and me. The room went silent. Even Lila stopped typing. Show me the real numbers, I said. All of them. Lila turned her laptop around. The screen showed years of declining sales, mounting debt, and desperate attempts to keep up appearances. The store hadn't turned a real profit since before I married Eli. Why didn't you tell me? I asked him. I could have helped. It's literally what I used to do for a living. Mom said dash he started, then stopped, looking trapped. I said we could handle it, Margot finished. This store was my life before you came along. I couldn't just dash. Just what? Trust me? Accept that someone else might know better. The old anger rose in my throat. You'd rather commit fraud than let me help? We did what we had to do, she snapped. To protect our legacy. Your legacy? I stepped closer to her desk. What about my legacy? The money you're so desperate to get your hands on, that was my aunt's legacy to me. The only family member who ever truly supported me. And now you can support your new family, Margot said, her voice softening. Isn't that what marriage is about? Sharing everything. The manipulation was so obvious it almost made me laugh. Like you've shared everything with me? Cass, please. Eli moved toward me. We can fix this. Together. I looked at my husband, really looked at him. The man I'd given up my career for, who'd let his mother systematically push me aside while plotting to take my inheritance. Okay, I said finally. I have some conditions. Hope flickered across their faces. First, Margot steps down. Completely. No more secret books. No more hiring decisions. No more control. Absolutely not dash, she started, but I cut her off. Second, we bring in an independent auditor. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. That's not necessary. Lila spoke up for the first time. I can dash. You can leave, I said flatly. Now. She looked at Margot, who nodded slightly. After she left, I continued. Third, Eli moves out until we figure this out. I need space to think clearly. What? His face crumpled. Cass, no dash. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. Margot stood slowly, her face tight with fury. You ungrateful little dash. Mom, don't, Eli warned. No, let her finish, I said. Let's hear exactly what she thinks of the woman whose money she's been plotting to steal. The silence stretched between us like taffy, sweet and dangerous. Finally, Margot spoke, her voice trembling with rage. This store was successful long before you came along, and it will be successful long after you're gone. I smiled, feeling strangely calm. No, Margot, it won't. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Because I just forwarded copies of your creative bookkeeping to the IRS and the bank. I'm sure they'll find it fascinating reading. The color drained from both their faces. You're bluffing, Margot whispered. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. Want to bet your legacy on that? I couldn't sleep that night, so I went back to Sugar Haven around midnight to clear my head. The store always felt different after hours. Peaceful, almost honest in its emptiness. But as I approached, I noticed a light on in the back office. Through the window, I saw Eli and Lila huddled close together over the computer, their faces illuminated by the screen. His hand was on her shoulder, and she was nodding intently at whatever he was saying. My stomach lurched. I used my key to enter quietly, catching fragments of their conversation. Can't tell her about this, Eli was saying. It would destroy everything. But she already knows about the books, Lila replied. Maybe if we just dash. No. His voice was firm. Mom's right. Some things have to stay buried. I stepped into the doorway. What things? They jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Lila's face went white, and Eli's expression cycled through surprise, fear, and something that looked suspiciously like relief. Cass, he started. This isn't Dash. What it looks like? I moved closer, noting the spreadsheets on the screen. Then tell me what it is, Eli. For once, just tell me the truth. Lila grabbed her bag. I should go, Dash. Stay. My voice was ice. I want to hear exactly what needs to stay buried. They exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that people share when they're keeping secrets. Finally, Lila spoke. Show her, she told Eli. She'll find out anyway. He slumped in defeat, turning the laptop toward me. What I saw made my knees weak. A second set of books, going back years before I joined the business. Not just creative accounting, but systematic fraud. And at the bottom of each year's records, 2 signatures, Margot Rivers and my husband's. How long? I whispered. Since Dad died, Eli admitted. The store was in trouble and Mom. She couldn't let it fail. Said it would kill Dad all over again if we lost it. So you just went along with it? Year after year. I tried to fix it. His voice cracked. That's what Lila's been helping me with. She knows accounting, and I thought maybe if we could straighten things out before anyone found out Dash. Before I found out, you mean. The pieces clicked into place. That's why Margot hired her. Not to help with the store, but to cover your tracks. Lila stood up straighter. It's not like that. I really was trying to help Dash. By lying to me? By helping them steal my inheritance. No. Eli reached for me, but I stepped back. The inheritance thing, that was Mom's idea. I never wanted Dash. But you went along with it. I cut in. Like you always do. He fell silent, and in that silence, I heard everything he couldn't say. Every choice he'd made, every lie he'd told, every time he'd chosen his mother's approval over my trust. I'm having panic attacks, he said quietly. About the store, about Mom, about everything. Lila's been helping me deal with it. That's all. And you couldn't tell me this because you would have tried to fix it. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Like you fix everything. And I needed to prove I could handle it myself. I looked at my husband, really looked at him. The boy trying to be a man, forever caught between his mother's expectations and his own inadequacies. And I felt something inside me break. I'm done, I said softly. What? I'm done fixing things. Done pretending we're partners when you've never trusted me enough to be one. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Lila? The anonymous letter warning about the store's finances. Was that you? She nodded slowly. Someone had to do something. I laughed, the sound hollow in the empty store. Well, congratulations. You did something all right. Cass, wait. Eli called after me. Where are you going? I paused at the door, looking back at the ruins of my marriage scattered across a computer screen. To pack my things. I suggest you do the same before the IRS shows up. The bell above the door chimed as I left, its cheerful sound a final, bitter reminder of all the sweetness I'd thought we were building together. 3 days after I left, Margot showed up at Claire's apartment where I was staying. She didn't look like the polished matriarch I knew. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled. She clutched a manila envelope like a lifeline. The IRS is coming tomorrow, she said without preamble. We need to talk. I let her in more out of curiosity than compassion. Claire made herself scarce, squeezing my shoulder as she left. Where's Eli? I asked. At his sister's. Margot's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. I have a proposal. Another one? The last one worked out so well. She spread documents across Claire's coffee table. We can still save the store. If we act fast, we can restructure everything before Dash. Before what? Before you go to jail for tax fraud. Her face hardened. Is that what you want? To see your husband in prison? The question hit me like a physical blow. Don't you dare put this on me. You did this. You and Eli. We did it for the family. She stood up, pacing. Everything I've done has been to protect what my husband built. What we built. By destroying it. By saving it. She whirled on me. You think you're so much better than us with your corporate background and your crisis management skills. But you don't understand what it means to protect a legacy. I laughed bitterly. A legacy of lies? A legacy of survival. She sat down heavily. The store was all Robert had left when he died. His dream. His heart. I couldn't let it die too. For a moment, I saw her clearly, not as the manipulative mother-in-law, but as a widow desperately trying to hold on to her husband's memory. It didn't excuse anything, but it explained so much. I can't help you, Margot. You can. She pulled out another document. Sign over your inheritance as an investment. We'll make you full partner, equal share with Eli. I'll step down completely. Why should I believe you? Because I'm desperate. The admission seemed to cost her physically. Because Eli loves you. Because dash. My phone buzzed, a text from Eli, don't sign anything. Coming over. 10 minutes later, he burst in, looking wild-eyed. Mom, stop. It's over. Eli, please dash. I confessed. He wouldn't meet either of our eyes. To the IRS. This morning. About everything. The silence that followed was deafening. You did what? Margot whispered. I couldn't take it anymore. The lying, the pressure. He finally looked at me. I'm sorry, Cass. For all of it. I felt oddly hollow. What happens now? They're charging me with tax fraud. Mom too, probably. The store. He swallowed hard. They're seizing everything. Margot crumpled into herself. Decades of careful control shattering. You fool. You stupid, weak fool. Mom dash. Get out. Her voice was ice. Both of you, get out. I gathered my things, watching as she clutched the worthless documents to her chest. At the door, Eli caught my arm. I did it for you, he said softly. To prove I could be honest. No. I pulled away. You did it for yourself. Just like I'm doing this for myself. Doing what? I handed him an envelope of my own divorce papers. I filed yesterday. Cass, please. His voice broke. We can start over. Clean slate. That's the problem, Eli. You always want to start over instead of fixing what's broken. I stepped into the hallway. Good luck with the IRS. Behind me, I heard Margot's quiet sobs and Eli's attempts at comfort. The sound followed me down the stairs, a requiem for all our broken dreams. Outside, my phone buzzed again. An email from my old firm, responding to the resume I'd sent last week. Position available immediately. When can you start? I looked back at Claire's building, where the remains of my marriage were scattered across a coffee table. Then I looked at my phone, at the chance to reclaim my old life. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply walking away. I typed my response. I can start tomorrow. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. I was settling into my new office at Crawford & Associates when my phone exploded with notifications. Sugar Haven's windows were papered with official seizure notices, and local news crews clustered outside like vultures. I shouldn't have gone, but something pulled me there. Maybe closure, maybe morbid curiosity. By the time I arrived, Margot was giving an impromptu press conference on the sidewalk. This business has served this community for 3 generations, she was saying, her voice steady despite everything. We will fight these baseless accusations, dash. Baseless? I couldn't help myself. Is that what we're calling tax fraud now? The reporter's head swiveled toward me like hungry sharks scenting blood. Margot's face went white. Cashin. This isn't the place, dash. Actually, it's the perfect place. I moved closer, feeling the cameras following me. Why don't you tell them about the 2 sets of books? Or how you tried to steal my inheritance to cover your tracks? You vindictive little dash, she caught herself, aware of the audience. Everything I did was to protect this store. No. I was surprised by how calm I felt. Everything you did was to protect your ego. The store was just collateral damage. Like you're any better? Her composure cracked. You ran back to your corporate job the minute things got difficult. You never cared about Sugar Haven. I cared enough to tell the truth. The truth. She laughed bitterly. The truth is, you were never good enough for my son or this family. You were just waiting for an excuse to destroy us. Mom, stop. Eli pushed through the crowd, Lila trailing behind him. This isn't helping. Oh, look who finally showed up, Margot sneered. The prodigal son and his little accomplice. Lila stepped forward. Actually, I'm here as a representative of the IRS investigation team. She pulled out a badge. We have some additional questions about certain transactions. The silence that followed was deafening. Margot's face cycled through shock, betrayal, and finally, defeat. You were working for them? She whispered. All this time. Since the first red flag was raised, Lila confirmed. Though your daughter-in-law's evidence made our job much easier. Margot turned to me, realization dawning. The anonymous letter. That was you. No. I smiled slightly. That was Claire. Turns out she kept better records than you did. You planned this, Eli said quietly. All of it. Actually, I didn't. I just stopped covering for you. I looked between them, my husband and his mother, united in their delusions until the very end. You did this to yourselves. Please, Margot's voice cracked. We can still fix this. Together, as a family dash. We were never a family. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Margot? The store's success wasn't your legacy. The truth is, it was failing long before I came along. You just couldn't admit it. As I walked away, I heard Lila beginning to read them their rights. The reporters shouted questions, their cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. But I didn't look back. My phone buzzed, a text from Claire. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? I looked up at the Sugar Haven sign, remembering the day I'd first walked through those doors, full of hope and dreams of family. Now those dreams lay shattered like sugar glass, but something stronger had emerged from the wreckage. Me. Another text came through, this one from Eli. I never meant for any of this to happen. I typed back, I know. That's the problem. Then I blocked his number, straightened my jacket, and walked toward my car. Behind me, I could hear Margot's voice rising in protest, Eli's attempts to calm her, and the steady click of handcuffs. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about walking away and letting them destroy themselves. I had a meeting to get to, after all. Life goes on, even when fairy tales end. And this time I was writing my own story. 1 year later, I stood outside the empty shell of Sugar Haven, watching workers take down the sign that had hung there for 3 generations. The late autumn wind carried the scent of dying leaves and change. Claire joined me, 2 coffee cups in hand. Feeling nostalgic? Not really. I accepted the coffee, noting how the storefront's faded paint matched the gray sky, just thinking about karma. Speaking of which, she nodded toward an approaching figure. Eli, looking older and thinner, his designer clothes replaced by worn jeans and a work shirt. I'll give you 2 a minute, Claire said, squeezing my arm before walking away. Eli stopped a few feet from me, hands shoved in his pockets. You look good. Corporate crisis management suits me better than candy. I studied him. How's your mother? Living with my sister in Ohio. The court-mandated therapy is helping. He cleared his throat. The sentencing is next week. I nodded. We both knew he was facing probation while Margot would likely serve time. The justice system had its own sense of karma. I got your email, I said. About the new business venture. It's different this time. He pulled out a business plan, clearly prepared for this moment. A small bakery, completely transparent finances. No family involvement. I've been taking business classes, learning to do things right. Why tell me? Because you were right. About everything. He looked up at the empty store. I spent so long trying to protect something that was already broken. I broke the only thing worth saving. The wind picked up, scattering leaves around our feet. In the distance, a truck backed up to load the dismantled sign. I'm not asking for another chance, he continued. Just an opportunity to prove I've changed. As business partners, nothing more. I took the business plan, feeling its weight, literal and metaphorical. You know I'm engaged now. I know. Claire told me. He's a lucky guy. A year ago, this conversation would have torn me apart. Now it felt like closing a book I'd read long ago, familiar but no longer personal. I'll look it over, I said, tucking the plan into my bag. But I have conditions. Name them. I'm silent partner only. No involvement in daily operations. I met his eyes. And you get therapy for your anxiety. Real therapy, not just confiding in employees. He flinched but nodded. Already started. 3 months now. My phone buzzed, a crisis at work needed attention. As I turned to leave, Eli called after me. Do you ever regret it? How things ended. I looked back at Sugar Haven one last time. Through the empty windows, I could almost see echoes of what we'd been, young, in love, full of dreams about family and legacy. But I could also see what we'd become. Lies, manipulation, broken trust. I regret that it had to end that way, I said finally. But I don't regret ending it. He nodded, understanding. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. I know. I smiled slightly. That's why I'm considering your proposal. As I walked away, I passed the workers loading the last pieces of the Sugar Haven sign into their truck. One fragment caught my eye, the words "sweet" in faded gold letters. My phone buzzed again. A text from Claire. Dinner tonight to celebrate your promotion? I typed back, yes. And I have an interesting business proposal to discuss. Sometimes karma isn't about revenge or justice. Sometimes it's about finding the courage to close one door and open another. Sometimes it's about learning that the sweetest victories aren't won through destruction, but through reconstruction of yourself, your boundaries, your future. I glanced back one final time. Eli was still standing there, watching the workers, looking both lost and found. We caught each other's eye and exchanged small nods. Not quite forgiveness, not quite friendship, but something like understanding. Then I turned away, heading toward my car and my next crisis, leaving Sugar Haven and its bitter memories behind. After all, some things are better left in the past. But some things deserve a second chance. On the right terms, with the right boundaries, and with clear eyes about what's really at stake. Sweet karma indeed.